Hello folks, I'm Darren Ruggan and welcome to my channel. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. On today's video, we're actually going to break down a new video series, which I hope you will come to enjoy. I'm going to do a build with me series. I'm going to do some not exactly live coding. I'm probably going to skip certain parts because there's quite a bit of coding and some of it's a bit boring. Let's just be clear. You don't necessarily need to see me do the 15th version of the same thing. But I do hope to go through a few of the more interesting parts in that. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to build an application which has an Android, an iOS, and a web implementation, all trying to use the same code base and deploy a product live with that. Now, this is a replacement of an existing product or an upgrade. So this is going live. This is going into production. It's going in the App Store, only available in Australia, mind you. But if you really wanted, you can get a VPN, but let's be serious. It doesn't really matter what the actual app does. The main thing I want to do here is actually go through some of the things that should be in all apps. Not in this app for this particular domain problem solution, but we're going to go through and create a universal application using Angular and Ionic. Actually, let's jump over to the web and I'll show you some of the websites too. Okay, so we're going to use Angular, which is a JavaScript framework from Google, as the primary framework and language of the application. Now, I quite like Angular. I've been using it for a while, and I have experience with multiple JavaScript frameworks, and I do React and Ember commercially, and I still like Angular. I still do like Angular. There's a bunch of stuff that I quite like. It's just more engineering, but don't get me wrong, there's a bunch that I miss from React as well. They're probably the only one I move to, but it's good to also have the separation. Anyway, I digress. Back, we're going to use Angular. As you can see here, it shows Angular developed once across all platforms. But not only are we going to use Angular, but we're going to use the Material UI components. Now, I don't necessarily want to build a table and a date picker and some of these other sort of relatively boilerplate, as in they're in all applications. I don't really want to build one from scratch. So as you can see here, Google released a Angular set of Material UI components. Now, Material UI is a design concept or pattern which is released by Google. Some of it's quite interesting. I do quite like it. And as I can show you here, a lot of people play with these. You can go to like Behance for an idea of what you would look like or what something would look like. You can see particular people's redesigns, the variations that can be done with a Material UI. So it doesn't have to look like exactly what we're going to see. That's the point I want to make. And you can look for inspiration. We'll talk about this in a later video, but just be aware that there's a good place for you to have a look at what other people are doing with this framework, so it gives you an idea of what we can do. So let's come back to the Angular components. Now, at the end of the day, we don't want to build stuff from scratch. You go right back and go to binary, but that makes no sense. So the further up the stack and the more generic reusable components that we can use, the faster we can build other bits because we're using larger building blocks. And the larger building block that I'm using in this instance is the Material UI project. So let's jump in and look at these components. As you can see here, we have some components of like auto completion, badges, action sheets or bottom-up sheets, buttons, toggles, cards, which you find are quite useful in most apps. Use Spotify, all these sorts of, you'll see a bunch of cards, and then list views as well, which we'll get to in a sec. Checkboxes, chips. Chips are very useful when we're trying to do selections of different options. You're doing searches, toggling stuff off and on. Date pickers, you got to use date pickers. If it's only any business system at some point will have a date picker. When did something happen, or where is the thing that I was looking for that happened between these two dates? So you're going to always have those. Dialogues, dividers, expansion panels, forms, icons. Some quite good icons in the Angular icon pack if you really want to use them. Maybe not the best link, but there's pagination, menus, lists, but it's a consistent design paradigm. And we can go to the Material UI page and actually go into a lot more detail about how that design thesis is supposed to play out. And I recommend, if you're going to use this component, to actually spend a little bit of time on the Material UI design page to try to understand what they were thinking when they've sort of come up with these design paradigms, because you want to work with them. It's much easier to swim with the tide than to try to swim against the tide. This is a common design pattern across a lot of stuff, so it's worth spending the time to understand what they're looking for. So as you can see here, we've got a bunch of different components. In the first video, which I'm going to do, which will be the next video, where actually we do some live coding, I'll actually jump in and create a brand new project from scratch, and I'll show you how to import all of these components in a relatively easy way, so that you can have accessibility to these functions, and we'll plug a couple in just to make sure that they're working, and we'll deploy it on phone and on web. So stay with me, that'll be the next episode. And then we'll go through some other components. For example, I'm looking at adding some analytics into the project. So we might be looking at maybe Google Analytics, Firebase Analytics, as they're free to use. So we're probably going to go through those, having those running in iOS, Android, and on the web, as well as push notifications, which is also quite an important thing. Now, I might be at a slightly higher level than some other videos that you look at going through. I might speed through some parts because I'm trying to show you what should be there rather than showing you every step to do a certain thing. Because at the end of the day, if you release an application, you want to know who's using it, how they're using it, etc., so that you have the insights to understand what needs to change or be updated, or which features need more love, etc. So yeah, that's the project we're going to be going through. I hope that you join me for the journey. I'm going to probably try to take one topic, hopefully, per video, but I am conscious of time, so I don't want to do these larger videos, which I have done a couple of. I might stream those and then cut those down a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see. But some of the other stuff I'm looking for is probably going in analytics a little bit more, even maybe a little bit of funnels, advertising platforms, and we'll go through those, and I'll sort of go through most of those without actually going through the domain logic, because the domain logic is the business solution at hand, and that will be different for any idea or entrepreneurial idea that you have. But the rest of the stuff, it doesn't have to be these particular selections of implementations, but I feel that if you're going to release a product or service on the internet, you should have this sort of comprehension. Otherwise, you're sort of flying a bit blind. You're guessing a lot of stuff. So hopefully we can go through those in this video series. Now, there's going to be a few videos in this series, and I'll try to keep them short-ish and out each week. So if that interests you, give me a subscribe, follow along, and I'll catch you in the next video. Can I launch products on the internet that make money? You'll have to follow me to find out. Then hit the subscribe button and join me on my journey.